Oh my God. Well, we'd send them thoughts and prayers.
Yeah,
like we wouldn't help them. I mean, I actually pray, but we'd send them thoughts and prayers about helping them. Like, God,
but no money.
Yeah,
no
we're
money.
like, God, please put on some American's heart to send money there. He's all, how about you? I'm all a different American. How about, someone, thoughts and prayers, Sean.
All right, welcome to Tales from the Ditch. This is Sean, and with me, as always, is Seth. And we have a special guest on the phone with us today, now that we finally figured out our phone issues.
Yes.
It is actually my cousin, Shelly. Shelly, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Now, Shelly, besides being my cousin, there's actually a couple of significant reasons why it's interesting to have you on the show. You are a missionary in West Africa. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there. I got there, I went to France for 10 months in 2012, and then at the end of 2012, I arrived on the field in West Africa.
Gosh, so 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years. There was like a 15-month period in there where I was back in the States.
How do you feel about people who are in Africa for 48 hours and change their Facebook profile photo and talk about how they really made a difference? Do you feel like that's what's changing Africa, those 48-hour mission trips?
That's, I don't know. I feel like I kind of swing the pendulum on like giving grace and not giving grace, but I feel like in general it's not a great idea to do that.
And it's, I mean, and I want to assume they have great intentions. I mean, I want to assume they have a good heart about it, but do we really think that's what's going to make a transformation is I'm going to go there for 48 hours, use some of their resources, or the fact that I think we often go, oh, here's an American charity because someone's got to care about the kids in that country. I'm like, I was told there are already charities in Africa already on the ground there run by Africans. Like, why don't we donate to them? Like, they're natives there of the land, speaking, knowing the culture. I just find it odd. We constantly go like, man, we need to get some American charities to go over to Africa and get them started. I go, but they care about their kids too. They care about that country and they already have their own charities. Why don't you just support those? They already, I don't know. I just wonder about that stuff. I think they have good intentions. I just doubt how much that's really affecting things, but.
Yeah. If I had a pie chart of my frustration, that would probably cover a good, I don't know, 22%. What you just said. So,
I got 22% already. Yeah.
All right.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I recently went on one of those mission trips where I was there for a week, and it was great. But I was definitely impacted more than I think the people I was trying to impact. And I believe the goal is maybe to create awareness necessarily more than actually making a difference. But that awareness is good because that
totally
can turn around to fund full-time missionaries like yourself, right?
That is exactly, I mean, that's what happened with me. I went on 2 or 3, like, I mean, if you're measuring by the standards that we've become aware of and it's becoming more, there's a lot more people becoming more and more aware of the harm of short-term missions. And, I went on some bad mission trips, but they did get me to where I am. So, taking the good with the bad.
I think it's seeing, I don't know, Americans I don't feel like are always great with nuance, but like if you're going to go for a week or two and bring supplies or, quickly build some stuff, do some basic repairs, I go, okay, maybe that can do something. But if you want, and I understand that sometimes I've seen people, they go, we're just going to come down, drop off supplies, not going to use their food. We're going to stay in this different place. I get it. But as far as long-term change, that's why I even brought up, I think, the idea of coming alongside and empowering the people over there. Like, if I want to help Nevada, I want to find, Reno or Vegas natives, people who are native to that city and go, hey, what is already going on here? How can we empower you and support you versus necessarily always having to start a new thing and then kind of staying there and, maybe even putting down some roots. Cause I think if we can empower some of the people who are already native to Africa and go, well, what are you guys already doing? It almost reminds me of you plant a church in a neighborhood and say, man, we're coming here cause you need the gospel. No one's doing anything. And 20 feet away, there's a Baptist church that's been there for 60 years. And you go, well, why don't you help them? Like they're already there. I don't know. Is that making sense, Sean? Is that?
That's so much true. There's a book called, When Helping Hurts, that is basically taking a lot of the concepts that you just mentioned along with others that I pretty much just like try to pawn off as many people who are looking at missions as I can. And it's for domestic and international. Like it talks about, domestic work, the way the church and individuals handle, giving of money to people. And like the concept of poverty on a more holistic level. There's poverty of resources. There's also poverty of choice, poverty of knowledge, poverty of community, and looking at it kind of at a deeper and more long-term viewpoint.
You're actually the second person to recommend that book to me. Anthony Bradley recommended that book. This guy I really like, and he actually, that's so crazy because I think also we've talked about perception. Like if I watch some of those video, I don't know if I assume you've seen these videos, Shelly. Like it shows all of Africa is just a tiny village and the kids all have flies on them. I go, there are some. I don't know why they don't show. No, there are big cities in Africa, companies, businesses. They do this with South America all the time too. If you watch TV, you think South America is a village, but you got Chile has this huge economy. I'm like, why do we have to try to portray like everywhere else is just terrible and small? I'm like, there are beautiful places in these areas. Again,
with the nuance thing, like you talked about, like, oh, we can't possibly send money and people unless like, people have flies on them. Then we can send people over.
So, you've been there for 6 years, which is definitely, I think, in the sphere of helping and not hurting. And we can't be very specific about where you are or what you're doing, I guess, but,
I can talk about what I'm doing.
Okay, well, I'm curious. What are you doing as specific as you can get within security protocol?
Right. So I am with a Bible translation organization, and the country that I'm serving in, French is the language of wider communication, and then they have about 33 different dialects or tribal languages, and I am working within one of those people groups to translate the Bible into that language. So started going over there with a translator who had like studied, the original languages, kind of like one of these guys who does his Bible study, his daily devotional in Hebrew. And I went over there with his family and another single girl. And, the translator has since moved back to the States for health reasons. And so I've kind of taken over this role of like liaison between him and the national translator, the person who is doing the actual translation into his language. And so I'm working with this national translator every morning for 2 to 4 hours, rough drafting scripture and asking questions that my American translator has and answering via email. They've developed a special software for Bible translation, that's really accelerated the process. So that's kind of my role these days.
That is seriously, seriously, it is awesome. Like just as a pastor, I honestly want to say thank you because it's so cool when I can like pray about these things and go, oh, we know someone out there doing that. It's like there are people with that heart out there. Like seriously, that is super, I don't know. That's encouraging for me to hear because I sometimes get very focused on my area, which I think I should and I should shepherd here. But then I go, man, there's just such a big world out there of people who I want to know, to know the gospel. So thank you. Seriously.
Well, Well, yeah, thank you for saying thank you. And also, I mean, I don't listen to many podcasts in where I am because I pay by like the usage for my internet. It's not, I don't have an unlimited plan, but I always, as soon as I found out that Sean had a podcast, I listened to all of your podcasts. So
yeah, thank
I have
you.
actually listened to like 60 hours of y'all talking. So I feel like I know you, but you don't really know me.
Thank you so much for expanding our reach into Western Africa. So you're translating the Bible into a very local tribal language, right? And
It's the language, I think the last numbers I saw, like on the Joshua Project, maybe I think it says like 80,000 speakers, and they're spread throughout our country and a couple of neighboring countries.
And so I recognize the importance of this because I mean, we have the liberty in the United States of America to say, I'm going to choose a translation that maybe best fits my personality or my culture or something like that. We have like the old English American NASB, or we can choose the
Bono translation,
the Bono, the Christian.
I even bought the C.S. Lewis one because I love it. I'm biased.
So it's, and you're saying like French is the what'd you call French?
It's the national language, the language of wider communication. So like the police, the medical world, basically anything, especially in the capital, or anything professional or in business is going to be in French.
So French is the national language, but and I really appreciate this, the organization that you're with said that French is not good enough for this local group who speaks this certain dialect or whatever.
Really?
Yeah, so that's...
Yeah, it's hard for Americans to grasp because we're pretty monolingual, but it would be like, Sean, you know a bit of Spanish, and me being like, hey, you know some Spanish. How about you just read the scriptures in Spanish and evangelize to your neighbors in Spanish? Or even, that's almost not fair. I don't know what your level is, but it's not your heart language. It's not the language your mom spoke to when you were a kid. It's not the language you count in. It's not the language you dream in. So why would we force someone to, make the biggest decisions in life in not your heart language?
It's interesting that you bring up Spanish because in the United States of America, speaking Spanish, especially in an official form, is a really hot topic because people say, "What? We speak American here. We only speak American, and if you don't want to learn our language, get out." But I think that that's very inconsistent with the gospel, with the message of Christ, and also with the first century church reaching people in their own dialect and very specific culture, probably way less than 80,000 or whatever. Was it 80,000 you said? And so I think it's super important to be meeting them at their level. Are there and I'm just curious about this, are there very specific cultural things in that dialect or language that changes the meaning from French or whatever other local dialects there are, like a lot?
I feel like you're asking a really big question. Can you narrow it down a little bit?
Kind of like
sorry.
If in like European Britain, if they said, "Oh, Bob's your uncle," everybody in Europe would get that, but nobody in America understands what that means. Are there things like that in this local language?
Right. Yeah. I mean, idioms. Is that what you're...
Sure.
Yeah.
Sean
I don't know words or education.
Sorry. Like, yes to whatever question you're asking, because it's not at all the same. Like, French and English are Romance-based languages. This language is in the Mande language tree, so like there's no carryover.
Oh, so French isn't similar at all to the local languages. It's just maybe the political.
No.
Oh,
Which
interesting.
was kind of, I mean, I knew it was going to be like this, but it was kind of sucky. Like, I went to France and I studied Spanish, and I mean, I was at a good level of French after 10 months because, you know, like, they have a written, like, they had grammar books I could study. I went to school, a structured school. I could watch movies. I could listen to the radio. And, you know, the culture is much more similar to America than the African culture that I work in. So then I get to West Africa, and this language isn't yet written. So all of our language learning is strictly oral. There's no, my teammate is the one who's actually, like, you know, analyzing the language and the grammar and the phonology and the phonetics and writing grammar paper on it so that we can move forward in the translation. So it was a much longer and harder and slower process.
I wonder if the Native Americans, when the Pilgrims came, they were like, learn the language or get out. They had like red hats, met them at the dock. Like, get out! Stealing our gerbs.
Get out of here.
They came up, they're like, you know, I assume some of you pilgrims are good, but they're not sending their best pilgrims. They're sending their worst pilgrims. Like, how do we know them? They're bringing disease, gang members.
They're bad Yankees.
They're bad Yankees. It's like, you know, which is funny. They did bring disease.
Yeah, that's weird, right?
But, you know, I mean, who would respond like that? So I'm sure the Native Americans didn't respond that way, because who would? But anyway, I digress. I don't know why I would bring that up.
One thing I'm curious about, if there is a major religion in the area that you're in, if you can say that.
Yeah. It's, I think 90% is conservative, probably more like 95%, Muslim.
Wow.
Okay. So you're fighting for your life every day in some kind of post-apocalyptic. You have to cover your face.
So they haven't gotten you to become a Democrat yet? Because I'm told that's what Muslims, like, they have this needle that makes you a liberal.
It's it's part of their 100-year plan.
Oh man.
No, seriously though, is there persecution that you experience in a Muslim dominant 95% Muslim nation?
Yeah.
No, you guys know, I think you know, Islam is like Christianity in that there are many faces. And, so I'm in an African-based context, so it's more of a kind of a synchronism between Islam and African tribal religion, which is more of an animistic, sacrificing animals for certain things, drink this potion for that type, situation. So it's just a mixture of those two things. And also I'm near, I'm not saying country names, so it's hard to explain this. Anyway, they like white people. They like Americans. They're not going to, unless, you know, a war broke out or something, they're not going to be violent towards us. And in fact, they tend to really like us. Even if that love or like is an economic, it's usually economically, driven, they tend to like us. Their own peers, their own people of their people group who, you know, may decide to follow Jesus. There's going to be pushback. There's going to be, persecution, usually like in an economic and like social form.
Okay. And
yeah.
Because we're taught, I feel like, or I shouldn't put words in people's mouths.
All taught.
I've been taught that everybody in a Muslim-dominated nation wants to see America and white people be decimated from the earth or destroyed, completely eliminated.
Every single Muslim that exists.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's interesting, and maybe, like you said, that's one of the different faces or facets of Islam, or maybe it's actually the, I don't know, a general idea of Islam that's completely different from the American mindset, but it sounds like you're not running for your life and sneaking Bibles into this tribe.
I'm near a place where the West and especially the UNHCR came in after a civil war and helped a lot of people. So a lot of the older people around me are refugees from that conflict and have nothing but good memories and thoughts towards the West for that reason.
Wow.
Really? Wow.
Huh.
So it's very, it's very it depends on where you are and what has happened in that people's history. But I would say that's fairly the same. That's across where I am. The UN came in to help. The UN has come in during, a lot of African conflicts and whatever, giving out blankets, giving out green cards, giving out beans, set up camps. That's a fairly common experience. I guess I shouldn't talk outside of what I know, but
feel free to. We do it all the time. So. I think you're hitting on something because, all right, when I went to Dubai, it almost felt like the Vegas of the Middle East because as long as I had like money to do business, they didn't really care how I acted during the prayer call. I think they would have cared more if someone there became a Christian or how they were acting. And I think it's sometimes the same with Europe because we go, well, every person in Europe hates and is disdainful towards America. I'm not saying we haven't made enemies, but I've seen it depends where you go because there's documentaries that talk about Poland for the longest time had a good picture of America after World War II because of different assistance. So I think it depends where you go because there's Muslim countries that go,
definitely.
They say, hey, we're of this, minority tribe and the majority tribe was slaughtering us. We don't have a bad image of the West. And I don't know why we're not seeking more to see those bridges instead of focusing so much on the disparities or divisions of, I have not, of the people I've met, especially America is a whole nother thing, but the Muslim friends I've met in America, not one of them has shown any animosity or even like disdain to me. In fact, they were very charitable when they invited me over, like tons of hospitality. So, but American Muslims is way different than a village under Sharia law in Afghanistan. That gets into, is there Sunni and Shiite or is that not a dynamic there?
Where I am,
if it's not safe, that's
frankly,
fine. Just wink twice at the phone.
No, it's not that. It's more, it is more like there are certain people who know those kind of things and more of a pure Islam who can read the Quran and things, but then there's a lot of folk Islam that, they're just following whatever their imam said and they don't actually know all those different things outside of their own world. So
imam is their spiritual leader, right? Or
correct.
Local
Correct.
congregation?
Yep, exactly that.
Okay. Because
So,
I wasn't sure what is Oh, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say the place I am living, we purposely chose because it's kind of the linguistic and cultural and religious center of the people group. So my neighbors are kind of the most, what would you say, like the most practicing and most religious people of their people group.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah.
What do, because I wasn't sure how much they even care about media in America. As American, I always have to bring it back to us because we're the center of the universe. But what do they think about us constantly marching around, saying how much better we are, or even our opinions of them, or even what they think of our political climate? Because we have so much argument and conflict now. We have so much. Even people can't even have a basic discussion about stuff. I mean. Do they watch American media? Yeah. Do they care? Do they kind of laugh when we say, like, we're the ones who make the world spin? I mean, what do they think about all that?
Well, so first of all, the three of us on the ground aren't making those statements. But they, like with the onset of smartphones, they all do have smartphones and they do watch, different videos that are coming across Facebook. And, they do have BBC radio and that kind of stuff. There's several different avenues I could take and I'm trying to figure out the most. They actually really like to talk politics and it's not my favorite in that situation. their favorite thing when Obama was president was, like, what do you think about a black president? I know most of you Americans don't like black people. And, they all kind of have some kind of someone, that they know said something. So then they all, it sounds like I'm oversimplifying my friends, and I'm not. It's just, it's kind of exactly what Americans do. Like, they see one, I don't know, Chinese immigrant at Dollar General, and then they're like, oh, those Chinese people, they really like shopping at Dollar General. It's generalizing the things that you don't know, because it's the easy thing to do.
Right. Of
course. They kind of do that. They kind of do that with us. And, I try not to be irritated or offended at it, because we all do it. But, I saw this guy from America say that he loves Trump and everything he does. Is that what you think?
And you answered. How did you answer that?
No. I said no. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad my mom doesn't know what a podcast is.
Actually, that's an interesting thing that I'm curious about. We're cousins, but I grew up in
That's correct.
I grew up on the West Coast. You grew up in the Midwest, right? Is that considered the Midwest?
Yeah, it's kind of a border. I mean, Arkansas is considered Southern America's kind of like a border state, I feel like.
Sure, yeah. So something along that, in the Bible Belt for sure, right?
Yeah, correct.
And so culturally, I feel like you and I were raised a lot differently. So being somebody from the Bible Belt, and I find it very easy to criticize the Bible Belt simply because I'm not a part of it. But I'm actually curious, like, what kind of culture shock did you have going from the Bible Belt to West Africa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you that you and I probably did have different upbringings, and but now it's pretty cool because I feel like we have a lot more in common, mostly through Christ and our beliefs.
Amen.
That's cool.
So going from Oklahoma to France and then West Africa, it was interesting because I became more, I feel like, liberal in some ways and more conservative in some ways.
Yeah.
And so, like, it wasn't a straight across the board one way or the other, but, I had a lot of training and, like, preparation for going to West Africa, so I kind of knew what I was walking into. So actually, I would say I became more conservative on a lot of levels as far as kind of what we started the podcast off with, economic aid, and how to handle those kind of situations, just because I saw short-term helps and long-term helps and the differences in the outcomes. So, and also it was one of those situations where you kind of don't know what you got till it's gone type thing. Like, as far as, like, we bash our government a lot. I mean, I do too. But America's government is, hey, it's corrupt, but it's like, I don't know. It's not as corrupt as the government that I live under overseas.
That's right.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point.
We have good roads, and we have police officers that get paid so they do their job, and they don't bribe and steal outright. They might,
not that much.
Some of them do. Right. It's actually, it's against the law to bribe if you're a police officer. I don't know. It made me actually appreciate America a lot more.
That's awesome. It is true. We are less corrupt. So I saw that in Thailand where I went, hey, that's something going for us. Like, this guy's in charge of the drug task force. And, I think it was, I'm not sure. I think it was the prince at the time. He was in charge of, I think, their drug task force, and he turned out to be a drug dealer.
Oh my!
And I don't even think he went down for it. So you go, oh, geez. So I went home. I'm all, we're less corrupt. Good for us. We're not as bad. Because it is true.
On the fighting scale, yeah.
Because there is a big difference between a cop shoots someone and we go, hold on, there's at least an uproar versus, yeah, and what are you going to do about it? I do think that is something to be grateful of. No, we're at least going to have a case. There is some, like anger at versus, no, I can do this and just shoot you in the street. I mean, some of the, if you see, it was, I don't know if you've seen the documentary, Shelley. So it's called Winter on Fire, and it's about Ukraine. And to see some of the Ukrainian or Russian police, goodness, they do not, we treat our protesters and rioters way better. I'll say that, because these were unarmed, getting gunned down. I mean, it's hard to watch some of it. But I did say, hey, at least, the worst you're worried about is, you get hit in the face versus shot 3 times when you have your hands up from an AK. I mean, the Russian police are just brutal. And they basically look at you like, what are you going to do? Who I mean, they have guys in government who are ex-KGB. That's some rough, that's a rough hood, but yeah.
So you became more conservative in the area of appreciating American government and kind of how small or short and long-term missions work. In what ways did you become more liberal?
In what ways did I become more liberal? I think, well, how, I don't know, conservatives tend to think that, poverty is an outcome of people's individual choices, and liberals tend to think that poverty is an outcome of the system that they're living under. And I guess I realized it really is a blend of the two. And maybe I was guilty of thinking it was more of an individual choice-based thing, but because where I am, it is also a blending of the two. There is a lack of choice. There is a lack of development. There are no jobs to be had. However, people around me, some of my neighbors, they could farm, but they see farming as beneath them. So it's kind of like, yes, the answer is yes,
Interesting.
I'd like to think I became more centralist and I don't know. I would hope balanced, but I don't know. So
there's people in West Africa who are not taking jobs because it's beneath them?
They're not, no. It's not like not taking a job. It's like I'm not going to go work in the field when a cow could very well come by and, in 5 minutes destroy my 2 weeks I spent in my garden. Jeez. Or a fire could come destroy it. So, yeah.
I think that's an interesting point with we always do that. We go, well, it's either I have this option or this option, right or the left, and we kind of let them determine the standards or the terms versus I go, well, why can't I have compassion on someone who was born into poverty? You can't choose who what household you were born into or who your parents were. You can't choose, what you were born into. Or then both their parents are sick or one of them dies. They don't have access to a hospital even or healthcare. They die and they go, well, why don't you have a job? Why aren't you doing this? Well, I didn't go to school. I'm taking care of my sister. Oh, well, why didn't you do it the way I did? I don't know why I can't have compassion and listen to a story at the same time go, hey, I still believe you have to repent for your sin or anything else like that. You still as a human, bear responsibility for your agency and who you are and to at least, pursue things or try or, fight or, I want people to still have a sense of responsibility, but also hear their story. We're always letting other people set the terms of, well, the Republicans say this, the Democrats say that. What does the Bible say? Why can't I hear their story and call people to more why can't I say,
yeah, it's difficult.
I can look at a guy and say, hey, I'm going to ask you to repent of your sin, but I also understand your dad abused you. And because of that, I have understanding, I have empathy, and I know that in your story. And it makes me a little more considerate of, okay, I kind of see why you're an angry, pissed off guy. It's kind of like they say the saying, it's not an it's not a excuse. It's more of a reason. It's, why can't we do both? Cause I could look at a tribe and go, hey, you were born into a middle class family. He was born with no parents. Rebels are coming up saying, join us or die. I'm sorry, and still look at the guy and go, all right, but after I've heard his story, he's become a Christian, still look at him and go, okay, brother, I know you're hurting. I'm still going to ask you to repent. I'm still going to ask you to the best of your ability try to pursue working and striving as hard as it is. It's that American thing again. We can't have nuance. It's red or blue, black or white. What we don't want to do hard work because that would take us actually getting to know a human being and actually digging through the messy stuff and going, oh, my perception might be wrong. Or it just, I feel like it's a lot of laziness. Well, and idolatry, but I also judge everyone because I'm a hypocrite. So there's also that.
It's hard. Well, yeah, what you were saying, it reminds me of, I used to work at a behavioral mental center on the children's unit, and these kids would come in with awful behaviors, and you'd read the charts, and there's all this sin and awful things in their charts, and it's like I think my head nurse taught this explains their behavior. It doesn't excuse it, but it explains it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of always stuck with me.
Yeah, I really wish we got to see people's story, because that's what I liked about I saw a guy on Facebook. He had someone post a comment that I feel like would have irritated me a little bit. And he said, hey, I'm going to do a live video in 20 minutes. I will answer all your questions. And dialogued with the guy explaining what he felt, responding to his comments for this whole live video. At the end, the guy who had posted, in my opinion, the comment was maybe just insensitive or uninformed. The guy who posted that literally responded, I am so sorry, brother. I didn't even see it from that perspective. I'm so grateful we talked. And he said, the guy doing the live video, I forgive you. It's totally fine. I love you. And it was a perfect example of, wow, they were charitable. They discussed. People listening right now, you can't see, but I'm doing the pastor hands thing. I'm moving my hands around a lot, but, that's missing where he was willing to have this messy conversation and feel things versus, you didn't say what I like, so I'm going to call you a moron or a stupid liberal or a stupid conservative. And I wish we had more of these charitable discussions, even like a debate, a healthy debate, to sit and go, okay,
right.
I'm across from you, and I'm not going to set it up by getting someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, and I'm just kind of punching down, trying to school them. No, let's get the best of the best from both sides. Literally what you think best represents your side, not what I think. And literally have a wonderful, not defensive, not insecure, a healthy discussion of just, so why do you think this way? Just biblically walk me through it, not pragmatics, not being utilitarian. Why do you think this way, sister? Why do you think this way, bro? I wish we had more of those. I feel like they'd be so healthy. I don't know.
Dialogue.
But, yeah. Sean?
Takes a long time to do that, I feel like.
Yeah.
American media, don't get me started.
Oh, yeah. Actually,
get her started, Sean.
That is something I want to get you started on. So you, like you said, you pay for internet by the megabyte or whatever. You
right.
Probably don't have, NBC piped in over the air, stuff like that. How has your experience with less American media potentially changed your opinion, or even just kind of changed how your day-to-day life works?
Oh, that's good. Well, even in West Africa, I get on Facebook way too much. I'll preface with that. But when I was home for those 15 months, it was for the Ebola epidemic. And that was when my kind of I won't say hate, dislike for the way this American journalism has progressed kind of began, because I left.
We'll edit that.
Yeah,
we're doing a clap, so we'll edit
we
that.
can bleep it because we've had people say a curse, so we're able to bleep it. He's had to edit about 7 things I've said already, I think. So yeah.
Okay, you could say it again with West Africa.
All right. I left West Africa, and Ebola was picking up, and I come to America, and there's no coverage on it, or there's a 5-second bleep on CNN, et cetera, et cetera. The second someone brings the disease to Dallas, American media is just all over it, because they feed on fear and they follow the money, and they know that if they, create this crisis, which, it was a crisis in West Africa. It wasn't a crisis in America.
Yeah.
And, but like the American people just like ate it up, and it was really difficult for me to swallow that. So, even when I'm in America, the only like American media I'll do is like a public radio or a BBC or an NPR, something like that, because
oh my gosh, you mean no Fox News?
I definitely mean no Fox News. Or if like I have no option, if I'm going to watch Fox News, I'll turn over to NBC and get the other extreme
and find some place in the middle
of the thing. So at least I have both bias in my head, so I can figure out where I stand.
So actually, this is going to sound terrible. So we had...
Go on.
I'm sorry. You had an Ebola epidemic in West Africa, which caused you to leave for a little while?
Yeah, I had come home for a funeral and then stayed for like a home assignment. And then when I was supposed to come back, I stayed instead because I wasn't going to be able to go back out to my village. And it doesn't make any sense for me to just stay in the capital, and my job is such that it needs to be with people. So,
so you're saying that you're saying that there was no American coverage of that until Ebola potentially threatened United States citizens, which I'm saying is correct.
Threatened the nation of Texas. Yeah,
I heard absolutely nothing about it until it had landed on
she just
stateside.
Made me aware of it. I didn't even, I'm all, what? I was like eating Cheez-Its probably at home and this was going on.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Ooh.
So it was pretty significant.
And at the same time, it was pretty hard. At the same time, I was also reading State of Fear by Michael Crichton, which is kind of like hammering in these same points. So, I mean, by the end of the time, I was just like, I hate American media.
Do you know who would love this episode right now, Sean? Is Alex Jones from InfoWars. Do you imagine if he saw there was a Ebola outbreak anywhere where it wasn't predominantly white people? I mean, oh my gosh, he would be visibly salivating. The shark demon liberals and their gay Ebola. Okay. I have seen this grown man blubber and cry and yell about protein shakes on 8 different occasions because it's comedy to me. He's literally, it's not like the crying, like tragic crying. It's the ugly shouting crying, biting his thumb, the protein stuff. It's like made out of like grinded up Democrat bones. Like he's an intense dude. I want him to hear just one of our episodes and
he's a listener.
He's a listener. Him and Elon Musk. Or as he goes by, Elon Musk. That's how you say it, right? Elon Musk. With the baby torpedo.
So one thing I'm curious about, we are so, mostly because of the media, but also just because of our cultural prosperity, we are so, in the United States of America, we are so obsessed with ourselves. Are there other things going on that you've noticed, like the Ebola outbreak in West Africa or something like that, that America is completely oblivious to?
Everything's fine in Syria right now, right? Because I haven't heard anything. So I assume everything's fine in Syria. Does anyone want to talk about Syria, maybe?
Well, yeah, this isn't, because like I said, I don't ingest the news. Actually, I kind of go in phases where I'm like all about the political world, and then I'm like, I'm not at all. So I can't give you any kind of like, around the world in 60 seconds type report. Are you talking about West Africa, or are you talking about like globally?
Either or. I'm just kind of curious, because the Ebola outbreak was honestly, I think, news to both Seth and I, except that I think I talked to you about it a little bit before.
Yeah.
When we saw each other.
What I'm realizing too is like Oklahoma is just north of Texas, and you didn't know that. And so maybe, cause like in Oklahoma, Arkansas, where I was, that was part of what made it so hard for me was it was like 24/7 panic and fear. And maybe it was a geographic issue. Now that I'm realizing that, I didn't know about it, then maybe it was just where I was. Like,
Oh, so it
was
wasn't
on everybody's
necessarily
list.
widespread.
Like, you couldn't joke about it.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Okay.
That's interesting. I had no
So
idea.
I don't know. We had, okay, so I mean, this is ignorance. This is a perfect example, but like the small town that I grew up in, they shut down school for a day because a girl went on a mission trip to Tanzania, East Africa, which, we're actually closer in the U.S. to West Africa than Tanzania is to the Ebola site. But I'm just giving you an example of the panic level.
They shut down school?
Yep, because this team of kids went on a mission trip to East Africa and they came back and some panicky parents said they're not sending their kids to school. They shut down school for the day.
Oh yeah. That is
Not my little Kevin. He's not getting Ebola.
That is a very different culture than I feel like even in Nevada. That's crazy. But still, I would say that is something we would hear about on the news and be like, oh my gosh, those Oklahomans, we got to take care of them.
Oh my God. Well, we'd send them thoughts and prayers.
Yeah,
like we wouldn't help them. I mean, I actually pray, but we'd send them thoughts and prayers about helping them. Like, God,
but no money.
Yeah,
no
we're
money.
like, God, please put on some American's heart to send money there. He's all, how about you? I'm all a different American. How about, someone, thoughts and prayers, Sean. You know what I want to say though, cause this sometimes does get a bad rap. Like, this is another, it can be both and, not either or, cause they go, oh, thoughts and prayers. Like, okay, one, prayer does matter, and to people, Muslims, Christians, and Jews in the faith community, that is saying they care. Like, it is a meaningful thing, like, to just say, we are thinking, we are caring. I think the only time it becomes unhealthy is if we stop there. Cause I think of the Bible where it's like, if you see a guy starving or hungry or brother and you say, oh, peace be with you, like, be well, go have a good day, but don't take care of him. And you see he's starving and sick. It's kind of pointless cause like, yeah, that's nice you said that, but do both. You can say, I'm praying for you, brother, and come in and eat with me. Do both. Like, I'm going to pray for refugees and talk to my church and say, hey, could we host one? And I've seen some churches do that in Reno, actually. There's one that, they had to stop because of travel ban. But they were doing both of, we're going to pray for the refugees, and I believe they're hosting 2 families right now. And that was a good thing of both and. Like, I'll give you thoughts and prayers, and I also will put my money where my mouth is, or maybe even make a trip of, let's do it. I think we really need to get away from letting the 2 parties in the culture determine the terms and actually bring a better story. We really need to start setting better terms and discuss, because you're saying stuff that I guarantee, half the people listening to us are going to go, oh, I thought my Facebook profile photo did cure Ebola. I didn't know, like, I thought that took care of it.
I changed the color.
I changed the color. I put up the flag of Africa. Like, I did you guys not say, I hit share? I don't get it. They're like, do I need to share again? I said, said share if you agree. I don't know what else.
Right.
They agreed.
Yeah, it's kind of that whole, right, like what makes you feel good and what does good. And they're not always, and actually often are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And what I want to say about the thoughts and prayers, like, I don't know, when I'm feeling particularly like spiritually courageous, I'll just be like, hey, can I pray then and there?
Yes.
And I feel like it's just a more moving experience for both parties.
I agree. Well, you brought up something like what makes you feel good. So I found with helping even the poor in America, it's not that we can't. It's that it's inconvenient or hard, because they say, I brought this up. You see a guy outside Rayleigh's and they say, well, he's just going to spend it on booze. All right. Well, there is a verse that says to the people who are oppressed or struggling or poor to actually give them strong drink.
Proverbs 31.
That's in there, but I'll get away from that. Let's say this. And I challenged him. I said, why don't you then say, hey, if you come in the store with me, I will buy you 1 sandwich you want and a bottle of water. And they said, oh, but but I'm busy. I go, okay, so it's not that you can't. It's not that it's impossible, but you just have ran out of excuses and you need to be honest and say it's inconvenient. Because my son and I even did that, and I was able to hold his hand. We go in and go, hey, I'll get you a gallon of water and you choose what sandwich. Yeah, it takes an extra 3 or 4 minutes, but if you're so concerned that they're all going to get Coors Light, why don't you just spend 5 minutes? Or I know people who say, I will carry around money with me. And if I see someone on the corner, they'll quickly pick a place that has drive-through real quick, drive through, come around and give them the bag of food and go, hey, I'm in a hurry, but I love you. Here's just some food to get you through the day. 5 minutes. So I found that it's not that we can't help the poor or other people. It's that it's inconvenient. And I think in a way it's supposed to be. When you help the downcast and the leasties, it's supposed to put you out a little. It's supposed to be a little bit of effort and work, because that's what it takes to combat the darkness. Is you have to reach in and fight. It's a struggle.
But you're enabling them. Aren't you enabling them to be criminals, Seth?
You and your
son are enablers, just as bad as the criminals.
I want to hear this because I think I know what joke you're making. But all right, so what law are they breaking? What are they doing?
I hear a lot occasionally about helping out the destitute, even if it is giving them, not alcohol or not money, but giving them food and water. That's enabling them to continue to not operate within the norms of society.
Oh, not have a job or not have
which is, in the Bible, it says you have to have a job or you have no value.
I think your cousin, what do you think?
Sorry, go ahead, Shelly.
Well, I'll try to devil's advocate this one because, so when I visited Reno, my part, where I live, I don't pass homeless people on a daily basis. I mean, I'm sorry. Where I grew up, in Oklahoma, Arkansas area. But in the Fort Smith area, they're doing a series right now of panhandling in Fort Smith, and they're doing all this research, and it's showing in this area, we're in the Bible Belt, there are, churches on every corner, there are clothes pantries, there are shelters, and, the conclusion of these interviews were, you kind of have to work to remain homeless. You have to it's a conscious choice. So I guess maybe it depends on where you are. And so I'm not saying don't feed them, but I'm saying, actually take it a step further, make it more inconvenient, take more time out of your day and figure out, hear their story and ask if they know that where these places are available. Try to see if you can find them some kind of work. It's the same thing in Africa. Millions of dollars have been thrown at Africa. And I'm not saying don't send money to Africa, but I'm saying there needs to be people that give up their life in the West and go teach, start factories, teach people new agricultural methods, teach skills. And that means taking time out of their lives, and it's going to get messy and take time.
I think that's a good point. Yeah. That, because they, I think, now obviously, there's some, you run to vets who are, PTSD, schizophrenic, all this stuff. They have trouble even going to an interview. Yeah. You do have areas where the shelter, they say, no, we only take, we might take this, we might not take families, or we're full. We have a tent city outside our shelter because it was at capacity 2 months in already because it was poorly planned. But then she is right. There are cities where the shelter, they go, we still have space and we still have food pantry. And I think it would be interesting for churches to look at, okay, how can we have more job fairs and maybe send a van to pick them up to come here and even help them practice with interviews. And I kind of come back to sometimes, I don't know, because I see what you're saying, of how Jesus would heal 9 or 10 and 9 leave and don't even care. And I think there is a chance I could be taken for granted, but I even think all right, if he is genuinely homeless or maybe even trying, I can go, hey, maybe this food will give him energy for a day, or, maybe it won't give him the full thing, but maybe in that moment, my job was just to, give him a meal so his stomach feels a little better, or bring him a momentary joy. But I do think if I think she's right. If I really wanted to go deeper and have a more conclusive, maybe permanent impact, because that's kind of a nice momentary joy, I would maybe go, hey, do you have a skill? Do you have Mike Rowe talks about that. There's all these labor jobs that they can't hire for because people aren't even trained for them. Maybe, see, that is interesting because you could go even farther than what I'm suggesting of, hey, maybe, I'm going to sit down and hear your story, and do you have any skills? Do you have any certificates? Or maybe, do you even have clothes for an interview? maybe give them clothes for an interview. Cause that could be a way you could be like, hey, I'll give you a ride and even, meet me at the store at this time. And see, now I'm thinking of more options, but.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, Shelley. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, and I realize I probably come off sounding like some kind of, like, I don't know, we're like a super conservative Republican type thing, but this is just coming out of being burnt out of having people ask me for money repeatedly in West Africa, and then watching, it's like I was talking about earlier, there's poverty of resources, and there's poverty of knowledge, and there's poverty of skills, and there's different kinds of poverty, and just giving someone money doesn't, necessarily alleviate their poverty. Sometimes you see, I don't know, we used to work in an apartment ministry in government housing, but people were pulling up in like super nice cars. And it's like, it's a system that they're locked into, and freeing them from the system doesn't always look like handing over money.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
No, I think it's a good point, because it's hard too, because this happens all the time. Is Sean and I actually did this because we would sometimes panhandle. It sucks. All it takes is one person running into us, and they go, "Ugh, these punk, they're probably faking the." Because I've heard that before. They go, "They're probably lying. They're probably faking," and I don't feel bad for the faker who goes, "No, I'm not even going to try. I don't care." Or actually, I live in a middle class home, but I'm just out here doing dumb things. I feel bad for the percentage that's genuine. Like, no, I'm trying to save up money to even get a shirt. I'm sleeping in my own piss. But because of you morons doing this, doing dumb things, either not trying, either you want to stay here, or you're just faking the homeless thing altogether. I've seen guys fake being a veteran or different stuff. They're frustrated going, I'm legitimate and genuine sitting in a wheelchair. But because you've done this, no one takes me seriously, and I am trying to save up enough money to even get a shirt from here. So I feel more bad for those guys, because that always happens at work too. Someone does something dumb and everyone gets punished. And they're out there. There are people they've caught. They go, you're not a veteran. There are fake dog tags. So then I feel bad for a real veteran who goes, yeah, everyone's driving by called me fake, and I am trying to get money and like get something to. See, it makes it such a mess when you add humans to anything. It's
so true. So true.
But yeah, I don't think you sound like a Republican jerk. It's just, this is how you get to the bottom of it. You have to nuance it, because my way was working fine for me and it wasn't challenged. So in my perception, I go, oh, it's just fine. And they seem happy. And you go, oh, and when you introduce this new perspective, then it's my job to reassess and go, okay, just like that book, when helping hurts.
Right.
Well, it's like that. I need to go, I'm sure there was people thinking, oh, they're happy we're helping. No, it takes someone to reintroduce and go, Seth, okay, are you thinking long term, or are you just thinking of momentary joy? Because a momentary joy is, it's nice to get a sandwich, but does it ultimately, I wonder biblically too, were they looking at, I mean, obviously you want it to look like the new heaven, new earth, but was the major focus in the command major societal change, or was it mainly focused on just charity and generosity at the moment? See, I wonder, I'd want to know the Greek of what was the focus of that verse, like what was the heart behind it to make sure, because when you help refugees in the Old Testament, oh yeah, it's in there, people. It wasn't, I don't think that they meant no refugee will ever suffer again, but it was like, you've been an exile in this land. You've been a refugee before. And that was, I might research that to see, okay, what was the heart in helping with poverty? Was it charity, or did they really think there'd be major societal change? Because they did that during the Black Plague too.
They did what?
Christians, helping with charity. They were the ones, when there was the Black Plague, they were the ones in there, like actually helping. There was even nuns getting diseases because they would be that close. So I don't know. I'd want to know historically what was the focus. See, now I need to study that.
Yeah. I think the book hits on that. I think it talks about like shalom, like perfect peace. So like a harmony of all those different like poverty things I said, community, resources, knowledge. I think the book hits on it in that way, like bringing shalom to life. And sometimes giving money to someone when they're hungry is going to bring them shalom. Sometimes it's not. And figuring out what it looks like for each person, and listening to Holy Spirit. on a case-by-case basis.
Can you say that
kind of
name
what I've leaned
again?
into.
The third person of the Trinity. Can you just say that again? Who was it that we need to listen to? I'm
Holy
dead
Spirit.
serious. Because it is not the Father, Son, and Holy Bible. Like, I love the Bible, but there's a Trinity, and it is, thank you. As someone who came from charismatic churches, I don't care. I'm taking it as a win. She said the Spirit, and
Yes.
she didn't say it.
Man, I was like afraid I like mispronounced Holy Spirit, but I couldn't figure out how that could have happened.
She's like, dang it. No, because it's that whole thing. Once again, discernment, to pray in the moment and go, okay,
Yeah.
is this
Yeah.
a guy just trying to do this? Is it a con artist?
Mhm.
Can I get food? Or to maybe even go, okay, today I have about 5 or 10 minutes. That's what I'm capable of. Versus a Saturday, I go, oh, I'm not with the kids. Hey, I could drive around a little bit. And there's a job fair I'm aware of. And maybe even go to church
Yeah.
and say, hey, here's what I'm doing on a small scale. Do we have a ministry first? And so I think look at your capacity. Like some people
Yeah.
could house one refugee.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have a big home. They could, welcome and sponsor a whole family. So
And being willing
Yeah.
to risk what,
yes,
from your perspective, is a total loss of that.
yes,
This is a total loss
Yeah.
of my
Yeah.
time or money or whatever, but I'm
Mhm.
risking
Mhm.
it for the sake of Christ. Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty big.
Yep.
And so that's good.
And I think, yeah.
I think we
I think
solved
seasons
poverty,
have a lot
guys.
to do
Good
with it,
job.
too.
Sorry, Shelly, go ahead.
Check. I was gonna say, I think seasons have a lot to do with it too. That's where I've had to, a lot of people ask for me to teach them English.
Okay.
And, I mean, it's ironic because it's like kind of exact opposite of what I came to do as far as like protecting and honoring their mother tongue, and they want to learn English. But, I've just had to, well, sometimes I'll do little lessons, but like, frankly, English teaching, that takes a lot of time and energy. And I've had to say, you know, there's going to be a time where I can commit myself to that. But right now I'm learning the language and I'm committed to this work. And, you know, sometimes when you take the long-term view, people don't appreciate it. They don't like say thank you and leave. You know, they look at you like you're a selfish jerk. And, it's hard. And I think after I read When Helping Hurts, that book, I was kind of immobilized with fear for several months of like, oh, I can't do anything because, you know, everything hurts or something. But again, with the Holy Spirit coming in, I just had to start like praying every time I got a request.
And gosh,
What
that's
do you
the
know
hardest
about-
part is trying to do the right thing, like biblically speaking, or even as far as your conscience goes, do the right thing, even when it's something that appears to hurt the person who's asking for help. Gosh, that's so difficult. That really does take the Holy Spirit and discernment.
It's hard because it's some people have the right motivations but don't take the right action, and then some people take the right action but not the right way or right time. And there's so much because someone might say, oh, let's go in this country, they have a dictator, take him out. And my immediate instinct as a dad, when I hear what they've done to kids, I go, oh, take him out. I get mad. I get, incensed. And then someone just has to raise their hand. Oh, well, who takes over after them? Oh, well, that guy's just as bad. Okay, well, we'll have someone else. Well, but if we have someone else, we have to be involved. Well, then we send more soldiers. Well, but they'll have to be stationed there and we're kind of short in this area. Okay, well, we'll give it money. Well, but their organizations are corrupt. We'll have the police check on that. Well, but they're corrupt too. Okay, well, and it's just, there's so much because you're dealing with different cultures. You're dealing with different governments. You're dealing with different views, like different paradigms. You go into some countries, like Middle Eastern countries, we've said, well, here's democracy. And a group might say, oh, that's cool. Another group says, who asked for this? Who said we wanted that? Or who says we even know how to function in that? Whereas in our faith, we go, well, we just see government almost fatalistically as like this just fact of nature, good or bad. It's just there. Why do we need democracy? I mean, there's so much there because we take maybe our culture or our views. Cause that's the thing. As much as I try to outrun my experience and my biases and prejudices, they always play into that's how I've seen the world work. And now I'm coming into a different atmosphere where that's not how the world works and thinking, well, I'll just superimpose this. And I really think this is like healthy what we're talking about. There needs to be a discussion, intelligent research. There needs to be actually looking at the numbers and going, it's not just, are we doing the right thing? Is it in the right way? And is it even doing what we want it to? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's a funny video. It's a parody, but it kind of embodies the conversation too. You just go on YouTube and type in, I think it's like smoothies for Africa. And it's, you know, some fake charity that's gone in and like, these kids, they don't know what smoothies are. And it's like, you know, never mind the fact that the building doesn't have electricity. They don't have fresh water, you know, but these kids don't have smoothies. And just kind of that whole concept that you can see playing out in the West.
That's awesome.
Now we got to solve that problem. Great. So now,
Now
poverty
smoothies.
and smoothies. I'm good with like one injustice at
Putting
a time.
that on our
Like,
missions wall at church.
smoothies for Africa.
There's only like one smoothie per 500 kids.
I'm like, you can just show you walking through a fake village. You're like, do you have 45 cents? These kids don't. You selfish child. How dare you? Do you have 5 smoothies a day? This kid doesn't. Just guilt people.
I
We'll
have
get
a
Sarah
question
McLachlan.
for you, Shelly, that is more contextual to us here in northern Nevada.
Alrighty.
It's about a tale from the ditch. And this can be, first, before I ask you the question, I'm going to share a tale from the ditch that involves, I believe, both of us. We have the same grandma. We're cousins, right? But we have the same grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And our grandma occasionally would take us to the back of a thrift store where they had the dumpster, because a thrift store has stuff that they have to throw out. It's like not even acceptable or not something they can sell in the thrift store. And so they throw all this stuff out. And the dump store behind the thrift store is full of toys and like actual objects that you can use in your house or even artwork. And so our grandma would take us to the dumpster, and this is what I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but she would park the car kind of in front of the dumpster, start smoking a cigarette, and open the little gate to the dumpster, and she would say, all right, kids, go grab whatever you want. And we would fill the back of her station wagon with all of the cool stuff we found from the dumpster behind the thrift store. Do you remember these times?
That woman could stretch a sit. I do.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And honestly, I think what I learned during those times was I was like, this woman has more common sense than any adult I've ever known. All the adults I've ever known have said, oh, you can't take stuff out of a dumpster because that's dumpster diving, or, oh, you know, if they threw this away, it's not good enough for you. But we found tons of stuff that was awesome, right?
That's so true. Her love for her grandchildren, outweighed the cultural norms.
Oh, man. I loved the days where Grandma would take us to the dumpster behind the thrift store. It was so fun. And honestly, I found a lot of good board games, and I found a lot of good toys and things like that. And I never understood, I still to this day do not understand how a thrift store of all places can throw things out. It's so strange to me.
That's true. That's a mystery to me.
So that's one of my
Seems
earliest.
kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it really is.
That's
one of my earliest tales from the ditches. I'm curious, do you have any tale from the ditch that you've experienced, maybe in Oklahoma, maybe in West Africa, or Iowa, or whatever it may be?
I was honestly, Sean, trying to remember experiences that we had in common, because we really didn't see each other that often.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
I was remembering you coming to Oklahoma, to our tiny town, and me feeling like, oh my gosh, this guy is so bored, and I really feel sorry for him. But I remember that Dad did take you out shooting, and I was like, oh, maybe he has fun doing that.
That's
but I
true.
didn't go.
I remember that. And it was so
Yeah.
much different than my context. You could just go shoot anywhere you wanted. As long as there was like a little berm or a hill, you could shoot into that hill.
Yeah.
Which is way different than where I'm from.
Okay.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because we did that illegally anyway.
I mean, you have to go.
You filmed me while I fired into the open air once.
Yeah, but that was illegal. What I'm saying is that we have to go, I think, 25 miles out of the city. Wherever I went, it was just like 4 blocks away. And it was like, go shoot these guns. As long as you're shooting into the hill, everything's cool. And I was like, oh, man, I could move to this state.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't personally know the ordinances and I'm not exactly sure officially, but that is correct that you don't have to go far. Well, I mean, we live out in the country, so you don't have to go far to be out in the country.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
I want to visit these places because if I can just shoot at things, you filmed me. I fired off several rounds with a Desert Eagle.
The central United States is actually pretty nice. There's a couple of benefits to it.
Do you... Well, because I've asked everything I could think of because that's more than... That's like... This went better than I thought. Do you want to ask her the most important question in the universe?
Yeah. Okay. Shelly, are you ready for this? As a missionary in West Africa, someone who grew up in the Bible Belt, who experienced the maybe most conservative red state theology and political influence, what do you prefer, cake or pie?
Pie.
Yes.
Yes!
Mostly because inherent in it is this diversity of goodness.
Oh.
Because it's not that I don't like cake, but there's only like 3 kinds that I like, whereas pie, it's like difficult for me to find one that I don't like.
Have you had strawberry rhubarb pie?
I have. Well, this is strawberry rhubarb tort, which I don't actually know. I don't really even know what that is.
Oh my gosh, throwing some nuance in the whole thing.
Yeah. Goodness, I'm so excited about pie.
Tort?
Right
Tart? Tort?
Tort. You said tort, right?
Torte, I think.
We don't even know about this in Nevada. We've never heard of it.
We have meth.
Yeah.
That's all.
I don't know. I don't know where this came from. I think
it's similar to a pie, right? It's not a bread filling.
I'm pretty sure. I think it had one of those kind of like a crumb crust, like I think like a graham cracker type crust.
Oh yes,
but
that's awesome.
It was delicious.
This went so much better than I thought.
Here's the thing.
I feel so vindicated in all my biases and everything I've always believed.
As a representative from the continent of Africa, you're saying that pie is better than cake.
As a representative of a continent who doesn't have a firm grasp on either of those things, I am making that statement.
From the dark continent, pie is better than cake.
Oh my!
Hallelujah!
It will flow down from the mountains like a waterfall of justice and glory. Amen. Amen. Amen.
So beautiful.
Amen.
Well, excellent answer. That's a controversial answer here in the United States of America, but we all know that it's true. I am curious, is there anything that you wanted to talk about or wanted to say that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
Like if there was something you said, I want to say this about West Africa, or maybe a misperception, just something on your heart that you're like, if I could say this to the tens of listeners, what would it be?
I would encourage, deep and heartfelt prayer, because it's kind of like what you said earlier, Seth, like prayer, we seem to think of it as this last resort, but it really should be the first one. And, I don't know, prayer can really, really, really change things. And, I think that's really what, the entire world, but I'm going to go with West Africa needs the most, because there are so many problems that are so big that, even after pondering, like, I don't know the right answer. And so I kind of feel bad for complaining when, world governments don't know the right answer either. And it's just things that really only prayer can solve. So I guess I'd go with that.
It's so hard for Sean and I be right so often and be humble. Just thank you so much for coming on. Seriously, because as a pastor, sometimes I go, oh, another call about a terrible marriage or an accident or something. But to actually be like, oh yeah, there's people still serving God faithfully out there. I think sometimes we get stuck in our tribe too of if you're Presbyterian, you only talk to Presbyterians or Baptists, to remember, no, there's a huge family. I'm not on my own. That's right. Like there is hope still. Like I think of, it's such a nerdy thing, but I don't care. Sam Gamgee, he says there's good in this world and it's worth fighting for in Lord of the Rings. He even when the clouds part one time, he sees all the stars and goes, wow, all this darkness and the light is still not affected. It's still there. And I go, oh, okay. I've only, the longest trip I've done mission trip was a 2-month one to Thailand. And I appreciate so much what you're doing. I think Sean agrees because usually we agree unless it's on stuff we don't agree on. But,
Yeah, I agree.
That's so good. I was reminded of another thing that I was going to take issue with you guys about.
Oh, dear.
If this is okay.
What was it?
You can edit it if not. Okay, so I listened to all y'all's podcasts, and I feel like I love a lot of stuff coming out of the Reformed movement. Complementarianism is like talked about all the time. And I get why, but I guess I wanted to ask you guys, I guess I have a hard time with it, not as a theological issue because I'm on board, but as a single person, I feel like complementarianism doesn't really speak to me that much.
Specifically as a single woman, right?
Yes, had to bring that up.
I mean,
Sean, goodness.
Actually, that is an interesting perspective. So, as a single woman, even not considering the fact that you're in a different continent, but as a single woman, what are you supposed to do with complementarianism? And so, that's actually a perspective that I think has been argued about by several individuals, not all who are single women. So I'm curious your perspective before I would share what we would say would be.
I think she has a point. That's why I'll wait till you guys have said something
point.
because
so,
I'm
curious from your perspective. You are a single woman living in a different continent. You are the leader of your household because you are essentially the only person in your household, and you, I would say, and maybe I'm not correct in this, but you don't come from a Reformed Baptist perspective. Is that correct?
Well, the interesting thing is, in the Bible Belt, I even asked my pastor of the non-denominational church that I, attend when I'm in America about complementarianism last Sunday, and he's like, remind me what that is again. But the thing is, when he showed me like but when he showed me the statement of like practices within the church, it's completely it's completely complementarian. And so I did the research, and like the term itself wasn't coined until like 1988 by like John Piper and Wayne Grudem. So if you don't like read, if you're not within, you guys know who if you're not within those echo chambers of the Reformed pastors and teachings coming out of it, you might not know that term, but they're still following those rules. And I don't know, some of it is there's probably some baggage there that the Reform movement, maybe wouldn't be on board with. But what I'm saying is my background is, it's pretty role based. You're not seeing women at the pulpit. You're not seeing women teaching men. You're seeing, a lot of teaching on wives submit to your husbands and, what that looks like. And I'm good with all of that. Really, my thing is more, what does complementarianism have to say to widows? What does it have to say to singles?
Yeah.
Because I'm single and I guess I'm selfish. So,
I think that's a very fair question, and Seth is a pastor, so I think he'll answer it.
Because I think you have a valid point, because the first thing I think we have to distinguish between is, okay, are we being complementarian or picking up a patriarchal view from the culture? Because we say, okay, let's not say what the Bible doesn't. It goes, okay, a woman shouldn't teach or do this. I go, okay, pastor. And then they jump and say, and she shouldn't do this, this, and this, and this in civil government. I go, hold on. Let's not just jump. I see it say pastor, but I see women business leaders. I see Deborah in the Old Testament. And so I think some of it, one, we need to be careful not to pick up cultural stuff. Two, I think we need to, once again, the word for America, nuance, contextualize it for people of, you can say some broad doctrinal statements, but then every now and then maybe say, hey, by the way, if you're a widow, some random 19-year-old, is not head of your household just because he's a man at church telling you what to do. Like, we need to find other women to build her up, disciple her. We want her to be submission into elders, much like everyone, not just because she's a woman, that's men and women. But look at that and go, do we have a ministry to talk to them, women to build her up? Because I've told many people I've known, I'm dating this guy, but the man's supposed to be a leader. No, you're not married to him. Hold on. And he's not your pastor. So I think we need to have more nuance and discussions, because Sean and I think when we talk about are often showing our tribalistic hand, which is, it's been such a debate and argument in so many articles that it's been a big deal within our tribe, while many other tribes are shaking their head going, why are you even bringing this up so often? We don't even care about this. And I think there has to be a context of, okay, as a single woman, I get this with preaching, but I still have to walk my faith the rest of the life. I don't know. I'd be interested in going, how can we come alongside her and not so much focus on what man are you following under, but go, hey, what women are in your life to build you up? What positive, almost like fatherly figures are pouring into you to affirm you and pray for you? I think I would shift it. I'd go from focusing on like, what man is she submitting to, more of what men and women are pouring into her, building her up. And then if you were married or in a leadership role, like as a deacon, then it'd be a different discussion of, hey, where do you see yourself? And if you're not going to preach, where do you see yourself as far as writing, or maybe being in civil government, or being, a political leader, or so I'd say I'd have a discussion with the person and go, where are they at in life? Where are they at, relationally? And also stop pushing this BS lie that the only place you find intimacy is in a sexual romantic relationship. We can have deep, meaningful relationships that are platonic, and, deep, meaningful intimacy within friendships that are completely non-sexual. We need to do that with single people. Stop hammering it like, well, here's where intimacy is. No, Jonathan and David had such deep intimacy. You don't need marriage for that. That is a beautiful intimacy, but I'd want to sit down, hear your story, and walk through it more of, okay, this is the phase she's in. Then, okay, who's affirming her, who's discipling and encouraging her versus just submission. Because I feel like we hammer that instead of practically, well, where is she at right now? Like, is that really an issue, submission? Or is it, man, I'm pushing back against darkness in a different continent trying to serve the Lord, and trying to make sure that not only, you're healthy in your conversations with men, you're talking to or working with, but also that they're not being condescending, talking down to you and realizing, hey, we're talking about a pastor in this verse, but that's not the context right here. You're on the field, you're fighting. And I 100%, well, this isn't always popular, but men learn from women in the Bible, because you have women singing songs, which teach theology. You have women prophesying, which teaches you truths. So I see it as, look, don't take a verse that's the main spiritual teacher, aka pastor, and then make that a catch-all umbrella over everything, because I am perfectly comfortable, and I am a hardcore complementarian, with you as a missionary being able to affirm, educate, and even enlighten men on spiritual truths where you're at. So I think we need to contextualize and have nuance. I'm not sure if this is answering anything, but...
And I just want to...
no, that's really good.
I just want to butt in before Seth Point's finished, because I agree that I have learned from my wife My wife has been the voice of wisdom in our marriage several times. I've learned from authors and even people who were doing what
Elise
you might consider.
I think she's great.
Elise Fitzpatrick. Yeah. Jen Wilkin, I'm reading the second
Kathy
book
Keller,
by her. Yeah, they're great.
Oh, I just watched a video by her, yeah.
Yeah, so good. And it's like, it's not something that is to be taken to an extreme where a complementarian extremist is going to say, oh, woman, can't learn from her, turn it off. I think that's ridiculous. So there's definitely wisdom to be had from women. And I don't think the complementarian position is saying that there is no wisdom to be had from women at all.
Some people do, but they're wrong.
But yeah, obviously some people abuse it. And so I just wanted to echo that inside of this echo chamber.
I'm praying for your traveling mercy, Sean. Just so you know, and echoing you.
So I'm curious, what's your perspective, Shelly, as far as believing the complementarian theology, but not necessarily the praxeology so much?
I mean, I'll be honest. It's kind of it's one of the spiritual truths that I know is true, and just sometimes it doesn't feel true, but I know it's true. I feel a lot that it's talked about a lot right now, but I know it's because the country is going through a lot of, gender type dilemmas. So I feel like the church in response is pushing this.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just afraid that we're going to kind of overcorrect. And, the more
Fair
crazy
enough.
And, off the rails the secular community becomes, the more tight and rigid the church is going to become. And I just don't want to see that happen. And part of it's just me. It's on me. I'm having this, cultural confusion, West Africa, America. So, I mean, part of it is just my own stuff. I recognize that. And part of it is, I do feel like the church doesn't handle, speaking to singles very well. And
Nope,
I feel like
I agree.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Something interesting that I think
completely
happens,
agree. She's right on, I think. I don't know. But.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Something interesting that happens in the United States of America is that things seem to move from the coasts inward. And that maybe sounds actually really arrogant.
Oh, it does. Go ahead.
No,
continue.
I think that's...
But I would
that's
say
reality.
like cultural things, whether it's from things that people find funny in YouTube videos to theology, they seem to start at the coast and move inward. And I feel like the complementarian buzzword started both in South Carolina, Atlanta,
New York. There were some in New York and LA. So that's
and
west
LA
and east.
and most of all Seattle.
Yeah. So west and
it moves inward. And so something happened in the Bible Belt where they're like, hey, we have to deal with this. And I actually don't know because I haven't been in the Bible Belt in the past 5 years. So I have no idea what it's like there. But it seems to move, I don't know, it's 5 years from the time it becomes an epidemic, I guess is an appropriate term, on the coasts to the middle of the United States, which would be, I don't know, Arkansas, Mississippi, Nebraska, Iowa, something like that. And so I feel like on Nevada, we're almost on the 1 or 2 year timeline for this. This is all theoretical, by the way, and I could be wrong about it, but I feel like we've gone through the complementarian trend, and we're in the state where we can say, yes, here's the strengths, and here's also the weaknesses, and we can admit there's weaknesses, and we don't have to obey 100% to what was originally told to us, and the waves are just kind of moving inward towards Central United States.
We can start refining it now. Well, because we can look at it and
that's
go,
a good thing.
Okay, we know the doctrine, but how's this? Because when you say this, it's love one another. Okay. Now, what does that look like? So it's a woman shouldn't, okay. Well, is that all teaching? Is that all? So we can nuance. We can start discussing. Danny Daly is the one.
Contextualize it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're in a spot now, and this is what my hope is for a new generation. I know what the Bible says. Now, how can I make sure I'm getting the clearest, most genuine, fruitful interpretation and practice of it? And let's pray through it and not just shout each other down or talk past each other. How do we bring that forward? How do we really bring it to fruition? I don't know. That's where I think
I look forward to the time where this is going to sound incredibly new age, but
new hippie, yeah.
If you create waves from the edge of a pool and they move towards the middle, eventually they're going to bounce off each other and reflect back towards the edges of the pool. I look forward to the point where we can hear the wisdom from the Bible Belt, because I can honestly say with arrogance and pride that from the West Coast, which we're not even technically West Coast, but we're close to the West Coast, with arrogance and pride, we say, oh, everything those Bible Belt guys have to say is ridiculous and we don't want to hear it. But to be honest, I'm sure that there's wisdom there.
Russell Moore. He's the one who advocated for refugees, and I was like, dude, and he's from the deep South. Wasn't popular.
Absolutely wasn't popular.
But he's that next generation coming up who the wave has hit, and he's starting to refine it and say, I don't know.
And so I want to hear that wisdom
Matt
that's
Chandler,
bounced off the middle.
Yes. I'm tracking with you. Go ahead. All right. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
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 Yeah,
that's true, Sean.
The Southern Baptist Convention, they were talking about for the first time in 60 years, they've actually put African American men in the leadership. They were actually just talking about putting some women on the Southern Baptist Convention chair, some of them.
Wait, what?
I know this is, and like saying like, well, does this fall under a line of what the verse says? See, they're nuancing it out. Yeah, the newest guy they just voted in.
Yeah.
Is there's early 40s as not a Republican. He's an independent. He won by 90% of the vote, I think. And this is all changing though. And here's the thing. They're not just pro-life. They're more pro-life. They're womb to tomb. They're cradle to grave. They're not just justice. Yeah. It's justice in every avenue. And I'm encouraged by that, because what I think we're going to get is less of a cultural Christianity, and maybe the numbers will go down of how many people claim Christian. But the ones that stay, it's going to be authentic, truer form of, we're no longer a moral majority. We're a prophetic minority, which Russell Moore says. And I love that. We don't need the numbers or some power. Our power's in the spirit and the truth. So, Sean, where are you going? Where are you? Sean has abandoned this podcast. Anything you want to say before we close, or anything before Sean and I say anything inappropriate? Anything you want to close with?
No, thanks for this. It was fun.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. First phone interview, first international interview. Well, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we can do this again and maybe hear about some of the effect that you've had, maybe after you're done being a missionary, or I have no idea what the future holds, but
that's up to God. That's it's a long-term commitment thing. So, but maybe for like next time I'm home or something.
We echo that, and we're praying for traveling mercies. So hedge of protection.
Thank you.
And we'll pray for a hedge around that hedge.
Yes.
And my unmentioned prayer request too, please.
Oh, I forgot the unmentioned and unsaid. And
wait, no.
I have a prayer burden for what she just said. So it just, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for affirming our pie position and also all the other amazing things you've done. And we really do appreciate that. We celebrate and also support long-term missionaries, and it's really cool to have you on the show.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you.
No problem.
Oh, it's fine.
All right. No big deal.
Oh, wait. talesfromtheditch@gmail.com. Send all your complaints about Sean. Zip it up. Zip it out. Thank you, guys.